Hey everybody, and welcome to Adventurers Out There, and I'm your host, Vanessa Cologne. Today we are going to talk about my top 5 things for being a good game master, or storyteller, or DM, whatever you want to call yourself. You're running a game, so these are kind of my top 5 things to do or not do. To do to help you run an effective game or a fun game. So we all get together as gaming people to have a good time. So my first tip, number one, is for that to facilitate that is to make sure your players are okay with the stories that you want to tell. And I mean by that, check in with them. In some systems, it's and like Nordic LARP, for example, and whatnot, is actually called an OK check-in. You can look that up. I may try and leave an article or two on it in the comment section. But so that is a thing, the OKs. So basically, when you're going to run a game, you get to know, even if, especially if you don't know, like your players aren't your friends, if they're not people you know really well, make sure you kind of talk to them before you start game and be like, okay guys, I'm running a game. Where is your comfort level in terms of rating? Are you comfortable at like a PG level where things are like daytime television, like prime time level in terms of gore, guts, violence, etc., adult themes, etc., etc.? Are you at a rated R? Are you at an X? Where does your group fall in terms of a comfort level with darkness and with that sort of thing? It's important that you get that from your players because that's going to give you a bar, and it's going to give you a sense of what your players are happy with, what's going to be fun for them, and also for you, and also it's going to prevent problems that could come up later if you don't do that. So it's really important that we all feel safe and comfortable. So making sure that you know exactly what level of darkness and where to put the fade to black moments is important. So the second thing, or the next thing, I guess, in relation to that same point on the okay, or what's okay with your players, is talk to them about their real life and ask them if there's anything in terms of themes or content that they really want to avoid. Is there like, does one of your players have a problem with having content about children? Does another player, say, have a problem with having content, like let's say they recently lost their mother, so they would rather not explore that aspect of a story with that character because it's just too close to their real life, and they don't want to. We're role playing is an escapist game, so we want to make sure that everybody has a good time in their experience, and so that as a responsible storyteller or DM, we know the triggers and we know what to avoid. So that's the thing. As a side note, I apologize for the stomping upstairs. My family's home. It is what it is. Also apologize for any ambient noise or voices or what have you. Not my fault. I can't help it. Anyway, so so rule number one, find out what your players are okay with, what they're comfortable with, and we're good to go. The crucial part of the OK check system is when they're with, and we can even use that with each other. So if character A is yelling at character B because they disagree about something in character, one or the other can throw up this, which is the OK symbol. And even without interrupting the dialogue, they can give a thumbs up, like, yeah, this is still cool, or no, this is starting to feel personal and bother me. I want to stop now. So having that in play and letting all your players know that that's a thing that they can do can help with players feel more comfortable. especially players who are playing LARPs or playing RPGs for the first time. It can help them really feel comfortable getting into the role play aspect if they know that there's a way for them to easily put on the brakes if they feel like they're getting in too deep. Because that's also important too, because again, mental health safety, super important. So that's number one. Okay, so now moving on to point number two. Know your audience. That's a little bit closer to point number one, but know your audience is in running a game for adults, completely different than running a game for children. Because it's just like for timing and for theme and for the amount of what you put in there in terms of your story arcs, your NPCs, all of that needs to be adjusted based on who you're running the game for. So keep in mind that this is especially important when we run games for conventions, like one-shots, for people that we don't know. We have no idea who you are. So I try and review the safety check system at the beginning, and I also try and go into I sort of try to keep my games down around the PG-13 level. If you wouldn't see it in a superhero show on primetime TV, probably not something you should have at a convention game without consenting with your table beforehand. But that's just me. Again, I am not the end-all and be-all. Know your audience as well in terms of try to get to know your players a little bit before they come in. So if you can read the room a little and look around and read the room is a little bit later, but if you can talk to them a bit and find out who are your really outgoing players, who are your players that you're going to need to kind of guide along and try and integrate. So because oftentimes at the table you'll always get that one player, sometimes two players, that want to be in charge, want to talk all the time, want to direct the group, want to direct the story, which those players are great. I love them. I totally am one, probably because I like DMing so much. So I totally love you guys. You guys are great. But I need to make sure that the shy players, the bashful players, the players that aren't as outgoing get to still have some story. So that is why when anybody submits a character to me, I ask for some backstory points. Some systems I've played in call that the character creation document. Sometimes some players will hand you a 15-page backstory. I prefer kind of somebody to hand me a one-page bullet point document that says, these are things from my backstory that you can totally bring in. So as you get to know the character, or if you happen to be given a sheet of paper that gives you backstory information, to draw out the less assertive players, I will oftentimes throw something from their backstory into the mix, or give them an NPC that they will have a reason to relate to try and give them more voice, more agency, and more involvement directly in the story. Unless, of course, I talk to them, and that's not what they want. Because there are some players and some people who don't really want to be. They want to experience the story and they want to participate in their own way, but they don't necessarily want to be in the spotlight all the time. So it's important to get a sense of exactly what your players are looking for in their gaming experience, which is also really important in the know your audience part. Every player plays for a different reason. I play for the story, 150 billion%. I am an RP person. I'm all story. I love the story. But then there are other people who they enjoy the mechanical bit. They enjoy the tactical part. They enjoy solving puzzles. They enjoy being in the dungeons. Everybody has a different thing that they like, which dot 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 segue into point number 3, read the room. So that's a term for people who are public speaking, is to look at their audience and read the room, see if they're bored, see how they feel. This is crucial in terms of running a good game. In my opinion, this is probably one of the most important things that you will do as a storyteller, as a DM, as a GM, is reading the room, is looking at the players that you have at the table and gauging how happy they are. Okay? This is important because we're all playing this game to have fun. All of us, the players, the DM, everybody. So sometimes what's fun for me isn't necessarily what's fun for you. So it's really important that with players, you try and incorporate all the different play styles, the different personalities, and kind of get a sense of what it is that they are there for. And try and balance out the party and the story to try and give everybody a little bit of what they want. So you're making like a variety pack here in terms of delivering a story. If you happen to be lucky and get a group that all likes the same thing, but most of the time you have a variety of player types at your table, a variety of people who like different aspects of the game. I know there's a lot of different terms for them. There's like tacticians and power gamers, and there's, hardcore RPers. There's people who are storytellers. There's all sorts of different types of players out there. And there are people who fall somewhere in between. So it's important for you to, like the tactical person is someone who likes problem solving. The RPer is someone who likes the role play. The story person is all about where the story and the direction of the arcs are going. The person who the power gamer is a person who is like obsessed with the mechanics, who likes to min-max their character's stats. They don't really care as much or tend to care as much about the story or what's happening specifically. They like to get in there and use the dots on their sheet or the numbers on their sheet. So they also tend to be the people who know the rules the best, because that's the part of the game that they really enjoy unpacking and experiencing. And sometimes I really enjoy having a power gamer at my table, as long as they remain respectful, because they are a great person. For me, when I'm running a thing over here, if they're like, I'm not sure what this rule is, I can be like, can you look that up for me while I continue to run something, so that I don't have to do it. Because half the time, they know what it is off the top of their head. So it's great to make use of people who are really, really knowledgeable of the systems, so that I don't have to look things up all the time. That is one way to help integrate, make the mechanical people feel like they're part of able to kind of be happy with the story people. Mechanically, use their knowledge. It's a good way to try and keep everybody at the table happy. Also, make sure that you, as you read the room, balance your encounters, as I said. So, if you're at the table and you're in the dungeon for the 5th week in a row, this session in a row, let's say, and the characters seem like they're kind of getting a little bit fatigued about being in here. The storyteller people and the RP people really want the story to move forward, because they're tired of bashing against room after room of puzzles or room after room of bad guys. That is important in trying to adjust things. So if you're in a pre-made dungeon and you can't really shorten it or change it in terms of length or breadth without tossing out the entire book, what you could do is see about maybe trying to integrate some story aspects or some little hints or tidbits or an interesting NPC, something that's going to really engage and pull out the storyteller or the RP players when you're in a really mechanical heavy ongoing situation. So that is, I've already gotten into part of my next point, which is just course. Adaptability is one of your biggest tools as a storyteller and as a DM. You need to be able to think on your feet. One of the, which one, my last point was respect player agency, but so an adjust course, they're kind of married, if you will, because respect player agency is really important too. There's an expression that among some of the boards that I'm on for DMing and whatnot, plot never survives contact with players. So you build this whole story arc, let's say, around this, you got the hook, you got everything set up, and then your players go shopping and they get obsessed with the store clerk or the guy selling sticks on the side of the road or some other thing, and you have to adjust your hook in order to get them off on the plot that way. Or they do something crazy that you did not think of at all when you designed this encounter, and maybe an entire story arc, because you intended them to have to retreat, or you intended them to do something different than what they did. I have had to rewrite the entire second act of a campaign because my players outsmarted me and murdered a boss in the first 5 minutes of a fight. It was legit. It was some bad rolls on my part. The dice gods were in their favor. And it just went that way. So it's really, really important to respect player agency, and when situations arise that you did not intend to happen necessarily, you go with it, because that's what makes role-playing games as opposed to reading a book, is that you, the players and the storytellers, are all immersed in this story and we're telling it together. And if you ignore player agency, then you are not telling that story together. You are dictating to them. You are railroading them. And most players that I know do not respond well to that. It's not good. So if your players do something different than what you expected, let them. If they come at the problem a different way, and come at solving the problem in a way that you didn't expect, let them. If it's still going to work. Just, it's important to adjust course, adjust your story, adjust your player, your the way things move, for player agency, and to make sure that your players have a say in how the story goes, which is honestly one of my favorite parts of DMing, of telling these stories together. I don't know how it's going to end. I know the situations I'm going to present you with, but I have no idea what you're going to do with them. And I think that's great. It's awesome. It's wonderful. It makes the stories dynamic and unpredictable for me as well as for you. What you do and how things move is awesome. And I'm going to do another video later, maybe tomorrow, maybe later tonight, about designing story arcs that are adaptable, and kind of some of the things that I use to do it. And again, I'm not the end-all and be-all, but there you go. So, we have finished our tips video on GMing. So, the first is, remember to make sure that you, first point, make sure you get the consent of your players for content, and that they understand that it's a safe place and they should all be okay and having fun, and facilitating doing that. The second is know your audience, know your players, know kind of what they are comfortable with and where they want to be. The third is read the room, look around, try and figure out how happy your players are and adjust things accordingly, how well the party's blending, how well people are enjoying your game and your story. And 4, adjust course. If you find anything in number 3 that needs adapting, adapt it. It's a story. It's a game. It's not super serious. Adaptability is totally an important skill for being a effective and a good DM or GM. You need to be able to think on your feet, and you need to be able to adjust for number 5, player agency. Make sure that you maintain the sanctity of player agency, and then they feel that they have the power to affect the story because you're telling the stories together. And those are my top 5 tips for making a good story, making a good game setting for your game. Not like setting like campaign, but setting in terms of establishing the norm at the gaming table with your peeps. So I hope you found this video helpful, and I will see you all next time on Adventurers Out There. Cheers.